And this brings us to the practice of Rumspringa, a period usually starting at around 16 and ending at around 18 to 22, where in some Amish communities the youths are no longer considered quite as subject to their parents' oversight, but also not baptized into the church either, so they're allowed to be a little more free with themselves than they will be once they choose to join the church officially. That said, while many documentaries and shows that cover this would have you believe Rumspringa is a time when Amish youths go off and have wild drug and alcohol-infused orgies for a few years, this isn't really for most. In fact, many communities, particularly smaller ones, don't really allow much of any additional freedoms of this nature at all, more just a general acknowledgement that young people aren't going to live up to the code of expected behaviours as rigidly as adults, and consequences for them are sometimes more lax as a result, even with the occasional looking the other way completely. However, when factoring in that Amish codes of behaviour are extremely strict, this slight lessening for these youths would probably still seem very strict for most raised outside of an Amish community. With, in many communities, about the most the rules becoming relaxed, being allowed teen boys and girls to participate in something called singings, though even then, in some communities, these are chaperoned by parents. As one former Amish woman, Misty Griffin, notes, in strict Amish communities like I belong to, teenagers are usually required to be baptized at 17 years old, the same age they start dating and going to youth singings. If they don't obey the church rules, they can be shunned. If they're shunned, they won't be allowed to date or attend youth social gatherings, and that is a big deal for a teenager. So they would usually try to avoid getting shunned. She also states, in the stricter Amish churches, young Amish women are held to a higher standard of behaviour than young men. Some of the teenage girls used to wonder about makeup, though, and tried to imagine what they would look like wearing it. That's about as far as it went among the girls in my church. Another former Amish man who remained unnamed stated, Rumspringa was not allowed in my community. In my community, you either left or you didn't. You could return depending on the circumstances, but you would still be shunned for some time. It was not something that was allowed. Going back to singings, which does seem to be mostly a universal thing among Amish communities, these might be deemed a highly religious version of a nightclub in which the kids get together in a family home and sing gospel songs without instruments, as the Amish don't allow such. Then, after, they eat and socialise with one another. Once it's closing time, so to speak, if one of the young men wants to attempt to take things to the next level with one of the young women, he would typically then ask her to allow him to give her a ride home in his buggy. If all goes well, they will continue to focus on one another in their socialising endeavours. This often includes dates at the girl's home, where the young man socialises with the girl and her family, plays board games, etc. They also otherwise may write letters and the like. If in a community, which is also a bit more lax about what the youth are allowed to do or not, they may even in some cases use social media to correspond during this period, though obviously this isn't the norm in most Amish communities. But in communities that allow such extra freedoms, Facebook is apparently quite popular among the Amish youth. If things don't go well over the course of this style of dating, the whole thing may be repeated with other potential partners until they find someone they match well with on both sides.